you like to ask a question first? Yes, I see many relations to the genetic theories, and I had never thought of the clone in terms of the genetic twins. The many twins world over signify meaningless violence. Violence between equals, you don't know what it begins, you don't know where it ends, and you cannot find any difference. And contrary to what people believe, real hostility is not the discovery of an unwelcome difference, but the lack of difference which unleashes total war. And your talk was absolutely full of that stuff, from the beginning to the end. It's an observation, it's not really a question. That's a comment.
Yeah, I think it, the figure of the clone is exhibited most dramatically in this regard in George Lucas's episode of the Star Wars saga, when we have the clone army, or the clone stormtroopers, who are, I think, kind of updating of the old figure of the crowd, or the mass. The old figurative notion of the crowd was you lost your identity when you joined the crowd, but when you left it, you regained it. In the Lucas cloned army, of course, when you leave the army, everyone under the hood, under the armor, they're all twins, and they are all, beyond their visual appearance of similarity, they all have the same DNA, actually all the same individual. So it is a kind of, I think, cloning produces this this figure, but updates it in a new way for our time, which is why total war.
Technology brings back archaic figures in a manner which is uncanny, which are explored. Okay, questions from the screen? Yes.
When I first saw the image, and I actually had not seen it before, I thought it was a woman. You know from the narrative that it was a male prisoner, but the looseness of the robe, really would not distinguish a man from a woman. And the downturn of the arms, I connected it with another image from Christian iconography, that of the Madonna of the Mantle, who opens her arms, and then she also is a figure of state, in that when her mantle is open, it's people, with all the members of the church, and she becomes literally a kind of an archetype for the church, the bride of Christ, and so I don't know, does that in any way, does that complement or expand your image of the body is the state, representing the state and its members?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely no way to determine with certainty simply from the image what the gender is. And I know of no independent evidence that women were subjected to this, although women were in Abu Ghraib prison, children too, they were subjected to torture. So, your point, I think, is quite right. It has to do with the anonymity of the image, part of what produces its power, because it can. It's like a Rorschach, and it isn't that it can just mean anything in the world, but it can mean a great many things.
I thought it was a female figure too. I thought the hands and wrists were particularly delicate. They looked to me like the hands of a woman, although the feet seemed rather large. But I had the same impression.
In Sister Helen Prejean's book, Dead Man's Walking, she imagined a time that an actual execution here in the United States could be televised into every living room in America, in the hope that the hiddenness of the grotesqueness of the execution would be for all to see and there could be a change. And I remember thinking when I read that, her book years ago, René Girard's theory, finally a movie was made, Dead Man Walking, and the image of crucifixion is also, Sean Penn plays that role, is also very much there. I guess what I'm wondering, in light of those kinds of images, where does the unveiling happen? Thinking, for instance, of Governor Bush in Texas signing more death warrants than any governor of the United States before him, and simply transposing the signing of the death warrant to the world in becoming president in a war on terror that just simply extends indefinitely the signing of the death warrant around the world. So where is the hiddenness of that and its exposure? Where is there hopefulness in the very thing that Sister Helen Prejean writes, and René Girard would also argue that that hiddenness has a hopefulness for turning a corner, for turning us away from the very violence shown.
I think I need you to explain what do you mean that the hiddenness produces hopefulness. I'm not clear on why that would be the case. I thought you were suggesting at first that it's the exposure that might
Which is what I
reverse
yes,
the...
thank you, yes.
Oh, okay. Then, yeah, I think that's a very good point. And of course, one of the reasons that, let's say the war on terror made sense, or that we recognize that there are really terrorists out there, we want to get them. One reason it's so difficult to get international cooperation is, of course, that the United States is really out there pretty much alone among major countries is practicing capital punishment. And so other countries will not extradite people who might be executed. So it's a big liability, and I think you're absolutely right. Unveiling this would be a good thing.
I was wondering if you could situate the iconic image in relation to, I guess, sort of the overall economy of images from Iraq, and especially what we're not seeing from Iraq in the mainstream media, and that is images of Iraqi civilian casualties. Right? That, for example, when the papers covered the murders in Haditha, I remember only seeing the room. You never actually saw the bodies. Right? That I'm wondering if, in some sense, the icon is also a kind of, at this point, still serving as a kind of cover, right, for things which are still even more awful, right, which may even take place necessarily without any malice, right, because of course, Iraqi civilians die when Americans mistake them, right, for, when they drive too quickly, to a checkpoint. And I'm wondering, what sort of relation is there between, in a sense, what we see and has become familiar, and then what's actually going on, but in a sense is simply too unimaginable or simply too awful at this historical point to enter into the public domain?
Well, I think the hooded man icon is, as you say, a kind of cover or emblem or logo for the entire thing. And so, in a way, sums up what we have done to Iraq, and in a way that resonates back on our own